Ready to go.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about what to do when your blower, like if you rev it up and it won't rev up and it just feels like it's bogging down, or even if it's hard to start. I've got this one that we just rebuilt the carburetor on, and we haven't adjusted anything yet. So it's just a perfect candidate for this video. Now this will apply to every chainsaw and blower and really weed eater, any little two-stroke engine you find out there. They're pretty much all the same principle. So let's get started. So to start off, we're going to look at the carburetors themselves. This is your typical blower or weed eater carburetor. So you've got the little primer on the top, and you'll see, you can tell this is the back of the carburetor because it's got this little hole. It's the negative pressure pump. To adjust this side would be closer to the engine. So the screw closest to it, which in this case is a spline fitting, controls your low idle. So we're going to turn it all the way down and turn it up one turn. This controls your high. That would be when you're at full throttle on your weed eater or blower. So we're going to turn it all the way down, and we're going to turn it also out one turn. Now that doesn't always work, but you're not going to touch the high anymore. We're going to work on the low first to get it idling and get it to start at idle, and then we'll work on this later. If this is for a chainsaw, then you'd have a pair of flatheads here. Sometimes it's also a spline, but it's the same basic thing. What you're going to do is turn them all the way in, and don't force it at the bottom. You know, you're not hanging a picture on the wall. Turn it all the way in, and this is the low. And you can tell it's the low again because it's the side closest to the engine. Yes, this is the side closest to the engine. It has the negative pressure port. And then your chainsaw, you take it out one turn. Now we've seen it off the engine. So let's go ahead and do one. So this is a little Craftsman blower. And the screws, in this case, are right down here, just like they were on the other carburetor. So we're going to start off with the screw closest to the engine, which would be farthest from the air filter. We're going to throw a screwdriver right there for our adjustment. Skidder on. And that's also a spline, which is the most common one. So I'm just going to leave that screwdriver there while we try to start it. So now, very similar to this carburetor, it's sitting on the engine like this. And we've got our two screws, and we've got the screwdriver set in one of them. So what we're going to start off doing is we're going to go all the way in, and then we're going to come out one turn. And we'll give it a run. We'll go ahead and put it on start, put it on full choke, and we'll prime it up. And this carburetor has been freshly rebuilt, so I'm not expecting much from it. I'm expecting it to be off by a mile. Okay, let's give her a pull. Oh, we heard something. So let's turn the choke off. So I don't think she's getting enough gas. So what we're going to do, we're maintaining the low side, the screw closest to the engine. We're going to take it out half a turn. And we're going to choke her again. Oh, and you heard that. So now we're not going to choke it anymore. And it almost wants to start. So now we're going to go a quarter of a turn. Give it a choke. There you go. And now she starts. So now we're going to do, let's start there, and we'll try to keep her running long enough to make an adjustment. See, now I'm basically turning it back and forth and listening to it. And right about there, she idles pretty good. So we're going to stop right there on the low screw. And now we're going to switch to the screw that's farther away from the engine. And it's just like this. It's pretty close. And we're literally going to hold it floored and make an adjustment. And now it feels pretty good. So if we were to go too high on this, if you were adjusting yours, and like let's say yours, you can see, because it's the high side, playing with it now has no effect on the way the engine idles. Now, if yours were bogging down like this, you say, okay, let's give it a little bit more gas. Too much. And now she sounds pretty good. And what you're doing on this, what we're doing on this is as we turn the screws in, we're removing the fuel. So this side being farther away is in front of the butterfly. So it'll only be affected when the butterfly is open, when you're hitting the gas. When you're hitting the gas, you're opening that butterfly. This one inserts gas inside the butterfly, so it'll affect you at idle only. So what we were doing was returning this very slowly, and then I heard the engine rev up a little, and then you literally just do it by ear. You listen to it and you find the sweet spot. Now sometimes with the idle, if it's really hard to start, then you'll say, okay, the idle is not getting enough gas to start. And now this one is. This one sounds pretty good. And before we break away from this, you see this one's really good now. You got a rebuilt carb. I want you to listen to it wide open. And you can hear that little stutter in it, little pop. That means she's getting too much gas. It still runs, but it's getting too much fuel, so you will foul plugs. So we're going to go and take the last one. And if you give it more fuel, it revs up faster, but you don't want to go so rich that it pops at the high end or stumbles. And that's about as good as this engine can run. So that one's just about right. Now this applies to chainsaws and weed eaters and any little two-stroke, little blowers like this one. Any little two-stroke motor, it's all the same thing. It's the same adjustments, it's the same tools, and it's the same method. So if yours is like stumbling when you get to the top end, like you rev it up, sometimes you can get this tool on Amazon and just make a tiny little adjustment and you'll be good to go. It'll buy you a few months before you have to rebuild the carburetor. If you've already put new gaskets in the carburetor, then getting it started that first time can be a little tricky. But if you start with the 1-to-1 settings, all the way in and then out one turn on each one, and then only adjust the idle and don't touch the trigger when you're trying to start it, you'll find that little sweet spot pretty fast. So all you new people out there, if you made it this far, you might as well subscribe. It's free and we appreciate it. So thanks for watching and see you next time.